the future is, but it'll never be our past. You can distance in your world, you'll never ever change the past. Yeah, yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Fight Club Hobbs. Welcome to another wonderful episode of GVN Live, your bi-weekly Tuesday show of fun topical discussions. With me, as always, is Mr. Mark B. Writing, and Jan is not with us, but in her place, we have special guest and friend of the show, Mr. Pure Instinct. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be back. I think I was on E3 last year, so I'm glad
You
to
were
be back.
you were either on E3 with, was it the not like an actual show, but we were doing a live reaction video, I think.
It was definitely after. It wasn't like live reaction. It was afterwards. We talked about, I think, the Sony press conference.
Okay, I know we were having a lot of fun with the Sony press conference while we were watching it live. That was a lot of fun. But hey, it's great to have you back. So we'll get right on to how you've been, all that other fun stuff. So why don't you tell us what you've been playing and what you've been up to?
Yeah, so we started Red Dead Redemption 2 today. Before that, I actually played Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It was the first Zelda game I've ever played before. I know it's kind of different than most of the other games in the Zelda franchise, but it's the first one that I played, and I had a blast with it.
Yeah, I still haven't played it. It's been about almost 2 years. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't played it in a while. I'm sorry. I've gotten pretty far along to the point where I can actually go ahead and start assaulting the mystic beasts, but I just never followed through on it.
I haven't played it at all because I don't give a shit.
Well, we know you don't like Zelda, so yeah,
Meh.
yeah,
Meh.
yeah. Anything else? I know you do play a lot of Death by Daylight.
Yeah, I actually picked it back up for the first time after maybe a couple of weeks this morning and played a few rounds of it while we were waiting for Red Dead Redemption 2 install. It's still fun. I'm excited to play more of it now that they've kind of changed up the whole end game concept. I want to see how that kind of plays out and actually is, as opposed to just watching it. But still a game that I'm enjoying after 300-400 hours.
Okay, so now I got to get your input on this. I have a friend who streams. Her name is Risa Havoc. I host her, and I sometimes freak her out with these donations, and for whatever reason, she has a soundbite that's just this giant, dreadful scream, which just catches her off guard every time I donate to her. But she's always when she plays Dead by Daylight. She was talking about these rule changes and these bans that were going on for people who were camping, or somehow people were glitching into the game, and there's multiple killers in the game, and all this other stuff. And some of these are getting fixed, some of these are not. So, what's going on with the game? Is it that broken now?
They went through. This was a while ago, so I'm not sure honestly how it's still kind of this broken. But they basically changed the in-game engine to update to be newer, and it kind of broke a lot of stuff. The biggest problem that I think everyone runs into now is as you'll get into the lobby, and then you'll get to a loading screen before the game loads, and it freezes. And I have to imagine that is where people are finding these exploits to get in. I've never seen it happen and haven't seen a whole lot about it. I think it would be interesting to see 2 killers pop up in the game, and I would think I'd play that. That sounds fun. But it's obviously an exploit in the game, so they're not going to let that happen. But I think it sounds fun.
That sounds fun, he says, assuming that you would be one of the 2 killers and not one of the people who was being stalked by the 2 killers.
I don't know. As a survivor, it could be interesting. A little bit more nerve-wracking than it
You'd
is
get
now.
fucked!
Yeah, the last thing I need is to enter a match, and the next thing I know, I'm being gangbanged by the teleporting nurse and Freddy Krueger.
It sounds like the movie idea my friend Joel came up with. You get fucked and then you die. Oh, well, what happens in that movie? You get fucked and then you fucking die. All right.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
So hey, that sounds great. I mean, I might pick it up again. I haven't played you got Red Dead stuck in my head now. Dead by Daylight.
much of the same sound.
Yeah, one too many words in common. But so Mr. Mark B. Writing, what have you been playing? What have you been up to, sir?
I have not been playing a goddamn thing.
Aw.
It's fine. I've just been dealing with my anxiety stuff.
Now play some more Quiet Man. That'll get you going.
I mean, I've played through it once. I don't need to play it again unless it's like on stream, and I'm not doing a stream right now. I want to try and get back to it this week, depending upon how I feel. But yeah, I mean, I haven't really been in the position to play anything. I've been, screwing around with like mobile phone games and whatnot, but that's really about it. I mean, by and large, my time has just been dealing with, like the anxiety issues that I've been having, waiting for the medication change that I've been going through to take maximum efficacy so that I can function as a regular person. But, I am comforted at least by the knowledge that nobody, at least like I haven't been the main character of Twitter in the past few weeks. Like there's a quote that somebody on Twitter made that said every day somebody on Twitter is the main character and the objective is never to be it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like I might have some anxiety issues. I might be distracted, but nobody on the internet has seen my penis who didn't want to. So I'll call that a fucking win. All right.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. Unfortunately, everybody, we are not going to be talking about Pro Jared's penis. We have opted not to.
No, that's incredibly fortunate. That is incredibly fortunate. This is probably the only conversation show that you have seen in the past like month that isn't going to be spending an inordinately large amount of time talking about that.
Yeah, in fact, the conversation ends now. As for what I have been playing, I got my Atelier Lalua in yesterday from NIS. Got my collector's edition. I've never gotten anything. Thank you. I've never gotten anything from NIS on time. It was crazy. Usually I get my game in 2 weeks after its actual release date. I got this the day before its release. That was crazy. What I've also been playing, I've been playing more Monster Hunter GU. That game is just fucking crack. Jan, you should be here with us.
She's working. Leave her alone.
I know. I'm trying not to make her feel too bad. What I've also been playing, I picked up a couple games that were on sale on the Switch store. The first one is Battle Princess Madeline, which, let's just put it this way, if you're a fan of Super Ghosts and Ghouls...
I kickstarted that.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Super Ghosts and Ghouls and Metroidvania-style gameplay, you got a win-win right there. I actually find this game really fun. So definitely check that out. And another one I picked up, I haven't really played it yet, but I bought it for like $4. It's Snow Battle Princess Sayuki. The best way I can describe this game is Pocky and Rocky. And I love Pocky and Rocky on the Super Nintendo. You look a little confused about that, Spencer.
No, I had something in my eye, and I was trying not to move to scratch it to not distract from what you were talking about.
No, I'm trying right now not to scratch my eye because I got a little bit of cat hair bothering me. We all have.
Yeah, that's why I don't have a camera. I can scratch my eye whenever the fuck I want.
But yeah, so...
I kickstarted Battle Princess Madeline, and I just have never played it.
You should definitely play it, Mark. You made a wise decision in kickstarting it.
It looked really cool, but yeah, I don't know. It just passed me by for some reason. I haven't installed. I haven't played it. I don't know why.
All right. Well, wait a couple weeks and then play it. I'll kindly remind you.
Why would I wait a couple of weeks? I had it for like 6 months.
What's 2 more weeks going to be then if you had it for 6 months?
But I don't. Okay. Anyway, I already have something planned for stream on Saturday, assuming I can get it working. I had to install a damn virtual machine, but this virtual machine works, so I can probably stream Sanitarium.
Are you using Oracle?
VirtualBox, yeah.
VirtualBox. Yeah, that's the problem I have with Oracle is just they just don't have 3D card support. Unless they updated that, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, like, I'm not, like, if I'm the only reason I'm using a virtual machine for a game is if it's a game that's turning off Arrow, because Streamlabs OBS uses Arrow for its, its framework.
Mm-hmm.
So DOSBox games will turn off Arrow because of how they're designed.
Okay.
And the problem there is that if it turns off Arrow, I can't see if I'm streaming or not.
Ah, okay.
I can't access any of my shit. So I'm running it through a virtual machine in order to make it work properly, because it's not running through DOSBox. If it was running through DOSBox, it'd actually probably work better. It's kind of running in compatibility mode. So
Okay.
like if I run it windowed, it lags really
geez.
bad, which is, I'm like, really? This thing uses like 20 megabytes of RAM, and you're telling me running it windowed is too much for my computer? What the fuck, Sanitarium?
Yeah,
really?
that's actually kind of funny. It reminds me, I was using Oracle some time ago. I was trying to play the original Diablo about 3 years ago, and for whatever reason, yeah, I used the fixes to make it run properly in Windows 10. It wasn't working properly, so I played it in Oracle, or whatever the other name is you were calling it, and I seem to have encountered some weird glitch. We got up to the Skeleton King, LASIK. He wouldn't die. I don't know what the hell that was. It was maybe a glitch we encountered because maybe it thought we weren't playing a legit copy of the game or something. But it was weird. But and it brought me back to 1996 load times. It was great. But so let's move on to the first topic of conversation. Like I said, our topics of conversation today are the anti-loot box bill being introduced. Some guy named Turner Tenney, also known as Tifu, accusing FaZe Clan of violating California law, and of course the one that probably shocks most people, Microsoft and Sony teaming up to form a cloud and gaming partnership of some kind. You know what? The latter sounds more interesting. Microsoft and Sony teaming up. So this was just something that just popped up out of nowhere, and it just took us by storm. And I would definitely have to say that this venture between Microsoft and Sony is something that's more or less an answer to, Google and their cloud gaming service. And while none of us here are absolutely interested in the Stadia whatsoever, the fact that that Google is forcing Microsoft and Sony to come together to work on a venture of this kind for cloud gaming and AI features is very interesting. Mark, what is your thoughts on it?
I mean, I don't necessarily know that it's a gaming thing in and of itself. Like that's not its major advertised selling point. But like this is the thing. When we think about Microsoft and Sony working together, we sort of think about it through the framework of Sega and Nintendo working together, where you have these companies who are dedicated to video gaming tech working together in some capacity or another to make whatever technology that they're making. And the thing is, Sony and Microsoft are companies that have many, many, many different hats that they wear. So it's entirely possible to be in a position where some parts of Sony and Microsoft will work together, just not necessarily the video gaming divisions of those. And I want to be clear here. This is definitely that case. Like Sony's gaming wing did not know that this was gonna happen. Like they were absolutely not aware of this. There's an article in Variety talking about that they had no idea that this was going to happen, that this was like a big shock for them. But all this really is them discussing how they're going to work together for the furtherment and development of cloud computing solutions. Like they're working together in two major capacities. They're attempting to develop work with semiconductors and artificial intelligence. And I don't know necessarily that that's going to have anything to do directly with competing with like the Stadia. I think it's just a business solution, like a business thing that they've come up with that they decided to do that happens to be between two companies who are hosting video gaming solutions. So people are kind of looking at it as, oh, this is that, when in reality I don't even know that it has anything to do with the gaming side of things, honestly.
Okay. This isn't like the first time, as you mentioned, Nintendo and Sega working together, that two major companies have come together to work on, something that might be beneficial for everybody in the long term. It's not like, Microsoft coming to Sony to, license Blu-ray technology for their console or anything like that. This is like, as you said, a venture in, cloud computing in the long term for like, enhancing technology, correct? And actually, here's a question for you, Spencer, in regards to that. In the long run, with Microsoft, Sony teaming up, do you see this as a way for them to have a partnership going into the next console generation, allowing Sony to finally open up to cross-platform play?
I don't know if this particularly means that that's what we're going to see, or that it would give us any indication that we would. I think at this point, with having some games that have crossplay across everything already, I think Sony is going to slowly need to start saying, yes, we will do that, because they seem to be about the only holdup on it. I think, like what Mark said, this is more just pushing that technology forward in general. And if that happens to affect the gaming side, which it sounds like it very well could, then great, it will. But I don't know that that's what they're necessarily focusing on, kind of the more that this has been out in the news and coming out, especially with the PlayStation section of Sony having no idea this was happening.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, in regards now to, we were talking about the services that Microsoft is providing Sony. Microsoft, of course, apparently seems to be doing this not just because of Stadia. I was just, reading a little update about this, but it might also be because, Microsoft is actually taking a loss from its rival, Amazon, who is also, getting involved in cloud computing, cloud gaming as well. And it's just like, do we really see cloud computing really becoming this big in the future? I mean, a few months ago, we were seriously talking about how we can't take Stadia seriously because it's untested, it's unproven, and not everybody is going to be able to have proper access to it across the United States, across the world in general. So why are so many companies, from Google to Apple to Amazon to Microsoft, and it's not just cloud for storage, it's cloud for computing, for streaming, all this stuff.
Well, I mean, hold on.
Go on.
You're kind of conflating two different things here.
I might be combining a few things, yes.
Well, here's the thing. We can simultaneously exist in a world where the Stadia is a bad idea and cloud computing is the future.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of where that cloud computing is focused. The Stadia is a home platform designed around the idea of allowing gamers, end users, to stream a spun up VM so that they can play a video game is is a terrible idea on a lot of different levels. It's not a particularly well thought out technology that I think is not really Google's attempt at doing the thing so much as it is experimenting with the idea of doing the thing and seeing what happens. Like it's not something that's going to necessarily be the future itself, but it's probably going to inform the future in some way. But like investing in cloud computing in other capacities is absolutely a thing that businesses are going to do because the cloud is very much a part of business organizations as they are run today. Like, I mean, for my company, as an example, we use both in-house and third-party cloud solutions to accomplish a number of different things. You know, hosting data that we need to have available in some form or fashion, using applications that are available through the cloud. From a business perspective, there's definitely a desire to have this kind of thing because it gives you a lot more access to a lot more storage and hosted applications and things like that on the move. Now, I personally have my issues with the rapid expansion of cloud. I think there's definitely some security problems there that people are just not thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
As Kane said, you know, para-virtualized GPU support and efficiency has been getting better in the past few years. So VMs aren't as evil as they once were for that sort of thing with the right gear. So it's the tech is definitely improving on the back end. I do think that from a business perspective, there's a lot of desirability around the idea of paying some other motherfucker to host all of this shit for you so that you don't actually have to have this on a server in a building somewhere that you physically own. It's if I have to have this thing hosted somewhere, I got to pay rent on the building. I got to pay people to be in that building. I got to pay to have that hardware supporting that software and all that shit. If I just set up a software as a service or platform as a service cloud, which is like different ways that this sort of stuff works. I'm not going to get into explaining what all of it means, but suffice it to say, it's just different ways in which shit can be hosted in the cloud. But if you pay somebody to host all of that stuff, you're paying them like a fifth of what you would be paying to own all of this stuff yourself. And if the shit breaks, it's their fault, not yours. So you can hold them accountable to stuff that's broken, and they have to keep that stuff up. Sony and Microsoft working together on this is almost certainly as a way to benefit Microsoft's Azure platform because they're one of the major cloud providers right now alongside Amazon's AWS, Amazon Web Services. So this is probably just a marriage of convenience as it relates to Sony having a hardware R&D department that Microsoft doesn't really have, and Microsoft having, a cloud computing department that Sony doesn't really have. So they're just like, let's smash our stuff together and see what happens, more or less.
Yeah.
I think it could definitely lead towards some type of working together, but the fact that that's how babies happen.
Yep.
But the fact that Sony corporate had to go to the PlayStation division and tell them, "Oh no, this isn't going to affect the PlayStation 5. Don't worry, the PlayStation 5 is fine as it is." Like the fact that there had to be that conversation shows that at least from the PlayStation division side of things, there is definitely an unwillingness to work together still at this point. So it may happen. I would not expect it to happen anytime in the near future, and that's 100% because of Sony. Like Sony's PlayStation division does not want that at this point. With the fact that PC gaming is becoming more ubiquitous and the console market is starting to slide off a bit, and the fact that, the Switch just overtook the PlayStation 4 in Japan as the highest selling console for this generation, I feel like Sony and Microsoft are going to start looking at the situation a bit more and saying, well, console gaming is not what it used to be. Maybe we should this, or maybe we should that, or whatever. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow, but in a couple of years, maybe. Right now, though, absolutely not. Sony, if nobody else, is 100% no, don't want it.
Okay. Well, there really isn't much more to talk about in this topic in regards to anything else. What are your final thoughts on this, Spencer?
I think I see the streaming services getting bigger over time, just because we have Netflix, Hulu for shows and TV and movies and everything like that. And Google had a test for Stadia that they called Project Stream, and surprisingly, it worked pretty well. I tried it out and actually used it and was able to stream on Twitch while using the streaming service, and it worked pretty well. And I like the idea of I can play my game on any device, no matter the capabilities. So if I have, a low-end laptop that I got for, college to write Word docs on, and that was it, I could still play games if I had a good internet connection. But with so much of the U.S. still having terrible internet, it's not going to be as big as it could be. It's too reliant on that at this point. I think we're going to see more people using subscription services, whether it's Game Pass where you can download the game and play it, or a full streaming service, just because if you buy a lot of video games, that might actually be cheaper if those games will be on that service. $60 games versus $10 a month if you're buying 4 or 5 games a month adds up. But
you're buying one game a month. Shit.
I mean, yeah, if you're buying one game a month every month of the year, and all those happen to fall on one of those $10 a month streaming services, that $10 a month is way cheaper. Whether that's going to be streaming or still you pay the subscription and then can download it and play it locally, I think is just a matter of how good.
Or they can promise you a game and not give it to you.
Hey, that's still going on in my life. We're going on. Let's see. Today is May 21st. That was January 15th. So
we're still boycotting Ubisoft.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
But, it's Ubisoft. Well, they give me Rayman, and they've been making some good Rayman games, so I'm happy about that, at least. All right. So, moving on. Let's talk about a fun subject. So, some lawman at Congress...
Some lawman. Like he's fucking walking around with a goddamn badge and a gun.
Decides to walk in and says, you know what? I think it might be illegal it should be illegal for, video games to be pay to win. Mainly this is all stemming up from, the huge amount of outrage from, people complaining about loot boxes and stuff like that. The last couple of years, thanks EA. So I'm just gonna read a little bit of this article from Kotaku. It's talking about this guy from the U.S. Senate proposing a anti-loot box bill and how the video game industry is worried about it. I don't understand why, because I'm sure it has a very direct stipulation about what it is. Pretty much, it's coming from Senator Josh Hawley, an advocate for video game players with an ambitious he's an ambitious politician, of course, from Missouri. Whoop-de-doo. Pretty much his proposal is to ban loot boxes and pay-to-win microtransactions to, pretty much... It's pretty much viewed as gambling, and in some parts of the world, it's actually banned outright because they view it as they view gambling as illegal. I forget which parts of Europe view it as such. But do you think this is too late or too soon, or just coming in at the right time, Spencer?
I think it's almost a little too late, but it is coming in at a good time. I think the biggest one that we've seen most recently is Fortnite. I know it was a little bit less loot boxy, but it was full of microtransactions. These skins.
Are you sure it was not? It wasn't the spending $200 to try and get a Darth Vader loot box in Battlefield 2?
That's also true. I mean, I feel like this one has been a little bit bigger because it actually got in the game. The other one, they're kind of like, hey, we're not going to do that after you said you weren't going to buy our game.
Yeah.
But I mean, I worked in the cell phone industry for 5 years, I think, close to that, and I can't tell you how many times we had parents come in with their bill and go, "What's this on my bill?" And we would say, "Well, that's where someone bought an app through a game or bought something through an app on their phone, and it got billed to your cell phone account because that's how they chose to do it." And they would yell and yell and yell that we had to take it off of their bill. Well, it's through a third party. We can't do that. So I think this is good, but I'm curious to see how it's going to play out. Reading through all of it, I feel like there's a lot of space still where companies can get through it, because the biggest thing they want to ban is loot boxes for the gambling aspect of it, which I agree with. We don't want, it says in there kids and adults can both be exploited, but obviously children are a little bit more impressionable than adults.
Mm-hmm.
So they're more likely to just say, oh, well, mommy or daddy's credit card's on my iPad.
Yeah, pretty much.
Buy over and over and over again. And they don't understand they may not understand that this is real money and mom and dad have to pay for that somehow. So I think getting rid of the loot boxes is good, but I feel like that's just going to make developers say, okay, well, it won't be a loot box. You just have to buy that specific card that you want or that specific FIFA player that you want. And instead of being 99 cents to maybe get it, it's a guaranteed $10 every time. So I'm curious to see if they maybe kind of get more specific with things, because there's still I feel like there's some wiggle room in there for shady people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, some of the video game companies are worried about it, that this bill will impact their sales for most of their free-to-play games, like MMOs. Pretty much adopted the microtransaction model several years ago as a means, because subscriptions just weren't working well unless you're World of Warcraft or Star Wars Old Republic or Final Fantasy 11 or 14. And the majority of their transactions were just mostly cosmetics, maybe some EXP boosters every now and then maybe a loot crate for a chance to win, like, a super rare, like, mount or whatever. And loot boxes in those regards, which were not, like, forced upon the players, like, like Battlefront was doing, or Fortnite was kind of doing, or even fucking Elder Scrolls Blades is doing, which is kind of stupid. But I don't exactly see, outside of taking away the gambling aspect of removing loot boxes, I don't see how it's going to exactly hurt their sales. The majority of the purchasing process for these free-to-play MMOs is you're usually buying like a secondary currency that's in-game only. So you're purchasing gems for Terra or a type of random named point system for another game, and then you're using those points to go after this and to go after that. So does that exactly will that still get, like, nerfed by this bill whatsoever? What do you think, Mark?
I haven't read the exact language of the bill to see 100% how it's phrased, but it definitely seems like their overall objective, like their overall goal, is to impact loot boxes and the cases where, like, they say pay to win, but I feel like it's going to be a case where it's going after something like a Candy Crush more so than anything else, where you go through and you have like a set amount of moves to do a thing, and you fail the moves, and they're like, oh, well, do you want to buy 5 more moves? It'll only cost you like whatever amount of in-game currency to do that. And, you keep buying the moves to move to advance through the stage. And it's, $1 here, $2 here, $5 here, whatever, to make progress in this game. So I think, like, that's more so the thing that they're targeting rather than anything else. Like, I think, depending upon how the language is set up in the bill, that there will definitely be things that will be caught up in this particular bill that were not necessarily meant to be. But I also don't think that Josh Hawley is very concerned about that. So, I sort of look at it from the perspective of that for him, that's probably a feature, not a bug. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there a chance that once this bill is proposed and it makes it through, that there could be tons of misinterpretation and companies who don't have, like, let's say, a pay-to-win model or even loot crate system in their design could be gone? People can go after. Do you think that's a major possibility?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And like, what are there? And I think Spencer was mentioning the possibility of loopholes for people to get around this. What do you think some of those loopholes might really entail? I mean, the first idea was one I just mentioned, where, like, you're spending money on gems and you're using the gems as a secondary currency to buy all this stuff.
Well, they're not even really interested in that.
No.
Right? Like, they're interested from a mechanical perspective in two particular kinds of things. The first is anything that could be constituted as or perceived as a type of gambling, which would be the loot boxes. Now, they are not. I haven't read through the law, but I have to, or the bill that's been proposed, I should say. But I have to assume that because these are 40-year-old white dudes writing a bill about something where, like, Jason Schreier over at Kotaku asked Hawley about this, and he's like, "Well, I'm not a gamer, and I'm not doing this for gamers. I'm doing this for kids." And to me, that's like, yeah, you don't know what a video game is. I don't think 100%. Like maybe you've played, Pac-Man at a bar or something, but you do not. And, like, this guy's my age. He's like, as long as he has been alive, video games have been around, and I don't think he plays. I don't think that that's a thing that he's particularly interested in. So the reason that I point this out is because I don't think he's particularly concerned from a loot box perspective about whether or not, this is, as, like, like people like Jim Sterling have said, like, it's tantamount to gambling. He's just looking at it from the perspective of, kids could be exposed to this. That's 100% his interest. That's the only thing he cares about. So for him, he's gonna be like, gotcha systems are bad. Loot boxes are bad. Like, that kind of stuff is going to be something that they're going to crack down on, I think. I don't know how that's going to impact things, but I do definitely think that a lot of mobile phone games are going to be very screwed if that goes through. Like most of them, honestly. The pay-to-win mechanics is going to screw over the rest. Like, I can't think of a single mobile phone game that I play that doesn't have one or the other. I can't think of a single mobile phone game that exists that doesn't have just, like, a straight up front cost that doesn't have one or the other.
Well, they did like 10 years ago, but now it's like literally free games with all these microtransactions built into them.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I do think that as far as games getting, like, dragged into it that weren't meant to, I think a lot of people are going to try and do that from a legality perspective. They're going to be like, oh, well, let's bring suit against this game. Let's bring suit against that game just because they're pissed about a particular game doing a particular thing. But people who are in our hobby are not usually the sort of folks who have tens of thousands of dollars to throw at lawsuits. So I don't necessarily see that going anywhere unless they have actual cause for concern. But on the other side of things, I do think that this is not necessarily going to have the kind of impact that people think it's going to. Like, as an example, this isn't going to stop Fortnite from doing what it does. They used to have loot boxes, but because of other countries putting in laws that restricted how loot boxes worked, loot boxes have been out of Fortnite for a while. They use FOMO, fear of missing out, to drive the shitload of their microtransactions that exist, not randomization, not paying to win. So, like, that's not going to have an impact on Epic on Epic in any meaningful way. Tencent is going to get fucked if it does happen.
Okay. There's a question that they asked Holly about the transactions, and he said something kind of weird. He wants to kind of like regulate the thing, work at like casinos where they don't allow kids. Like you were just saying earlier, how he's going out for the kids, and that the government doesn't allow kids to gamble, stuff like that, and he really doesn't seem to care so much about what happens to the game industry, games that rely on these, transactions and stuff like that, and that they might possibly, their games might have to be shut down or crash. And he's just like, oh, they're just resourceful. They can design games that don't rely on gambling directed at children to be the center of the game. Although I would have to say, a lot of the people playing and buying these games are not children. And that is kind of an asshole thing to say. I mean,
yes, but by the alternative perspective, this has been a conversation we've been having for years. We have been having conversations about how these gotcha systems are shit. We have been having conversations for years about how this sort of stuff, structurally, mechanically, etc., is trash. It's ass, and it's basically exploiting people's desire to have stuff in these games to make money. The worst of these games, like the most exploitative of these games, actively wring out millions of dollars from people a year just by exploiting a fear of missing out or a desire to get something with an exceedingly low percentage rate from dropping. And it is a deeply, deeply exploitative business model. And many, many, many people have said, you guys need to figure out a better way of doing business in this fashion because somebody's going to come along and fuck you on it. And, well, the man came around.
Say, here is that point.
Yeah, like I don't have any fucking pity for any of these companies because they were told many, many times by analysts, by commentators, by enthusiasts, by their gaming public, your shit is badly designed. You can't keep doing this. And now we're at the point where the government is stepping in and saying, this is fucked. I don't know if this particular law is going to pass now, but this is the moment where these companies are being confronted with their own mortality. Death has shown up at their doorstep right now. And they are in the position where whether this bill does or does not pass, assuming that it does not, they need to sit down and realize we're going to get fucked on this eventually, and we need to change this now.
So do you think this will force some kind of evolution in the game industry?
No, it absolutely will not.
No, it'll just be like everyone will say the course and then bite the bullet when it comes, right?
Oh yeah, no, they're absolutely going to let themselves get fucked Nobody's going to do anything. Like a very small amount of companies may resolve the issue in some form or fashion. Most of these companies are not going to make any kind of meaningful change. They're not going to improve in any meaningful way. They're not going to do anything that might be to the betterment of their experience with customers or to the betterment of their long-term business practices. They're Vince gonna Vince, as you know, as the concept goes. They're just gonna keep saying, "Oh well, it's fine, and they're gonna fine themselves into a hole in the ground. And eventually, a law is gonna come that's gonna fuck them, and they're gonna be like, "How could we possibly have foreseen that this was going to come to pass? we never could have foreseen this coming," and you know they're gonna go out of business. And like this isn't going to necessarily impact like a larger company necessarily, like larger companies that have their fingers on these sorts of games, like an Activision or a Sony or a Nintendo, are not going to be impacted by that. But like all the smaller companies who are doing this kind of stuff are basically going to fucking just boop, gone.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's extend this. Do you think they might go farther and go after, let's say, overpriced DLC on some games? No,
absolutely not.
That is safe.
That is 100%. That is a completely different model.
Uh-huh.
If you are talking about just paying a set amount of money one time for a product, that would be like that's regulating the industry, which I actively do not think the government wants to get involved in. Like they're not concerned with like price fixing. You know what I'm saying? That is not a conversation the government should interest itself in ever. So it's not a thing that they're going to get involved in. All they're concerned about is stuff that is exploitative.
Okay. Any final thoughts from you before we move on to our next conversation, Mr. Pure Instinct?
Not really. I think, like Mark said, we've talked about this for years and years, and everyone has tried to tell these companies, hey, this isn't always going to work. And instead of going, okay, we need to start looking to the future, they said, well, I made money on it today, so they just keep doing it. But I think you're right, Mark, that they have shown up, and the man has finally come. That could send these folks off track.
Looks like somebody literally took the Simpsons meme seriously. Won't someone think of the children?
Well, that's how the government always is, obviously, and it's like this guy, Josh Hawley doesn't know shit from shit as far as video games go.
Mm-hmm.
Like this guy is not interested in the video gaming industry. This guy is not interested in protecting anything in particular beyond the nebulous concept of the children. Mm-hmm. He's a fucking walking meme. Yeah. But it's
why can't we have a senator propose a bill and the senator's actually like a gamer, like that chick who used to be a governor in Arizona?
Well, I mean, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a gamer, but the gamers are mad at her because she likes liberal things and is brown. I don't know. I just don't like her, Paul. She showed up on Harris Bomber Guy's stream and said trans rights. So, like, listen, I'm not from New York, but I would vote for her.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
I'm not a fan of her politics, but it's whatever.
That's because you're a piece of shit, but that's fine.
I'm not a piece of shit, but that's nice.
You're a piece of shit.
No.
You're a piece of shit.
No. Moving on.
We just have political differences. I am much more liberal than you, and that's fine. I understand that.
I'm considering myself in the middle. So someone like you is going to hate me, and someone from the far right is going to hate me. So I don't win either way.
Everyone hates me.
Yeah, pretty much. So moving on from this, we are now going to go over, and I don't follow a whole lot of esports. I had a friend who used to be a shoutcaster for esports a couple years ago. He doesn't do it anymore. I don't follow, any of the MOBA games, any of these high competitions. I mean, I only know about Ninja because he's just this, because he had a controversy last year that we talked about. That's
Is Ninja even an esports person necessarily?
he
Like,
came out and
Yeah,
said he made $10 million last year.
no, that's not my thing. Like, I thought that he was like a streaming celebrity. I didn't realize that he was
He
part
does.
of
I think he does
a
compete,
stream
but
team.
he's just a big
He-
celebrity.
He came from Halo 2. He was
He
a
came from
pro
Halo 2,
Halo
okay.
2 player. That's how
Okay.
he got started into playing video games for money. He was a pro Halo 2 player who was just like he is at Fortnite, amazing at the game, and then started rising up on YouTube through like montages and things like that, and then moved over to Justin TV before it was Twitch to get into live streaming. And then as games evolved, he moved over to Fortnite, and that's where he kind of really shot up to be known, by people who aren't in the gaming industry. But yeah, he definitely is. I would say he's an esports figure because that's where he came from.
Okay.
I mean, that I can appreciate from esports.
Mhm.
Like I don't really have much of an association with esports. A former coworker of mine, her brother is a commentator originally was a commentator for HOTS, Heroes of the Storm, and then when that took a shit, he moved over to Rocket League. So I feel like he's probably cursed and should maybe just retire. But I also feel really bad for him because being cursed sucks. And if I wanted to commentate on stuff, and every time I moved over to a new platform, like it shit the bed, I'd be kind of disappointed. If nothing else, like hopefully he could move to like commentating on Fortnite and do us all a favor.
Yeah.
But
Ninja's not the guy we're going to be focusing on today. We're
No.
actually going to be talking about this gentleman by the name of Tifu. His real name is Turner Tenney. He's a pro gamer who then was a member of, I don't know if it's FaZe or Fuzzy clan.
It's
I mean,
FaZe.
it's FaZe because the F and the
I don't
Z are
care how they
capitalized.
fucking pronounce it. I'm pronouncing it phase because that's like how it
It's,
looks like it's pronounced.
Okay.
It's FaZe. They're like
Get this
saying
Hardy Boy
or,
shit outta
or
here.
motto, I guess
Yeah.
you could call it is phase up. I don't know what
Yeah.
it means.
Well-
That's their like motto.
All right. Well, he's considered to be one of the top esports professional players in the world, and he is suing them because pretty much he says they have literally taken 80% of his earnings, and he has opted many times to try and get out of his contract. And he has numerous sponsors ranging from Uber Eats, Red Bull, and Samsung. He has on his
Those
YouTube
are-
channel and Twitch combined about 450 million views. Those are numbers I wish I had.
Yeah, I mean, it
Those
kind
are
of
ninja
sounds
sponsors.
like, it kind of sounds like this kind of sounds like it's something adjacent to our other fandom, Robert, professional wrestling, where it sounds like they're kind of treating this guy like the WWE treats its people, sort of treating him like an independent contractor
Yeah.
instead of like a personality.
Mm-hmm.
And like they're using that as a way of dictating what he can and can't do and screw his money.
Yeah. According to him, though, he says that under California law, they are violating several laws. I'm trying to see. I just actually had one of them I was reading. His contract is anti-competitive, but the company run afoul of the Talent Agency Act through practice of procuring engagements and employment for gamers. I don't exactly understand that kind of language. I'm not a law person, so I don't know how stuff like that works. It says he violates the TAA violation claim to the California Labor Commission. Maybe the least of the problems. So, I mean, when have these companies started becoming like the WWE? Like, why are we?
Well, it's the same way that any company does anything. This is a conversation I've seen happen a lot in the world of rap and hip hop. The most notable example in the world of music, though, is probably the Goo Goo Dolls, who I'm sure we've all heard that story. They signed a contract that basically they were multi-platinum recording artists who were basically living out of a van at one point because they were losing so much money on their recording contract despite being one of the most successful bands in the world. But this also happens a lot to, young up and coming rap and hip hop artists where they will have somebody come along and be like not an agent. I want to be clear. These are the actual music companies themselves, right? Like the recording companies coming to them and pitching them a contract where they're making pennies on the dollar for any music that they make, and they basically have to tour forever in order to be able to earn a decent living wage. So this is not something that is unique to esports. Let's start there. I don't want it to come across as, oh well, gaming has opened up an opportunity that nobody has, been exploited through before and all of this other shit. No, this is something that goes on in any industry where talented people can be exploited by agencies that deal with representing them. Musicians have been signed to grossly unfair one-sided contracts where 90% of their profit is taken away from them, and they have to work like 1,000 fucking hours in order to be able to earn enough money to eat. It's shit and it's terrible, and this is unfortunately the way that things are structured in. I really don't want this to be a fucking political thing, but this is what capitalism does. This is what capitalism does. Sorry, it is designed so that the people who are making are not necessarily making the money. It's the people who are hosting the people who are making. So this is not new. This is not surprising. You should not be shocked by this. This particular person is getting fucked in the same way as a Goo Goo Dolls or a Zack Ryder, where he's being held from being able to engage in stuff that his parent company does not want him engaged in. They're taking the majority of the money that he makes and they're providing him nothing in return, really.
Now, we were just talking about, how a lawsuit was going off, or the bill is coming up to, prevent children from going through this crap. And chances of Congress, stepping into doing something like this for, not Congress, because this is taking place in California. It's not like the local government's going to step in and be like, hey, this is unfair labor, act or whatever nonsense they're going to try and spout. It's, I'm a union man, so I get well representation, so I'm not getting screwed over. Oh, shit. Ooh. Pardon me, my leg just cramped up. Shit, that hurts. What are your thoughts, Spencer, on the situation? In regards to, better representation for esports players not getting screwed over by, companies like this. Because there's a lot of esports companies popping up all over the place.
Yeah, and I feel like that in itself is going to end up being the biggest problem. Similar to we see record labels doing things, not only that hurt the artist financially, but also getting them involved in things that they shouldn't be. Like in the article, it mentions having them drinking before they're 21, illegal gambling, different things like that. That is a completely separate problem, I feel like. But we have so many esports organizations, and by esports organizations, I mean a dude who signed up for Twitter with blank esports in the name, and he is getting people who are on Twitch, YouTube, Mixer, whatever the platform might be, to sign a contract that basically says, you give me all of your money, and none of them are going to read through it because, oh, well, yeah, I can, I'm sponsored by an esports organization now. I'm a legit YouTuber. I'm a legit streamer. And that alone has happened time and time again with practically no name companies. But now we're starting to see larger companies like FaZe Clan. I mean, FaZe Clan has been one of the biggest esports organizations since, oh man, like probably the original Modern Warfare, when, you know, sniping montages started to become the in thing that people did in Call of Duty. So
Okay.
now we're seeing multi-million-dollar companies stooping to these levels as well, is what he's saying. I mean, I see in the article it's a lot of FaZe Clan is saying, well, it's kind of the opposite of what he's saying with the income. So it's I didn't read through all of the lawsuit or his contract or anything like that, because even if I did, I wouldn't understand it because I'm not a lawyer. But it's interesting to see where this is going to go and how this is going to affect other esports organizations. I don't follow a lot of organizations closely, but the few that I do seem to be kind of the exact opposite of what FaZe Clan is doing here.
Yeah, like the one I most prominently have followed. There's two actually I used to follow. There was one like well before the esports boom happened, and that was Empire Arcadia. That was started by, you know, Triforce. I don't know if you're familiar with them at all. Mm-hmm. And then the most recently, probably the most prominent one in the FGC right now is Echo Fox, with their head figure being, you know, Sonic Fox. Mm-hmm. And they just let go a whole bunch of their fighters, minus him and minus Sonic Fox and like one other person. So it's like, how well are they taking care of their players? How many of them are actually, you know, giving them safe contracts? Most of them don't even pay for room and board in getting them to these tournaments and stuff like that. This guy is an esports player. He's not getting paid. So it's just like, how do you read through the contract to make sure you're not getting screwed over? Should you practically have an agent at this point in the esports genre?
If you're this big, absolutely. I mean, Ninja does. Ninja has an agent. Most of the big streamers do. I think if you want to get this involved, if you don't want to have an agent, you should at least get your contract and have a lawyer read over it, because, you know, you're not talking about a $10,000 a year contract here. These are $1 million contracts that these people are signing at this point. And as esports gets bigger and bigger and bigger, they're going to start signing bigger and more serious contracts. So you should definitely be having a lawyer read over these things. If it's anything that you're signing that has to do with money, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, I don't necessarily think the contract in and of itself is that big of a deal. I think it's the fact that FaZe Clan is presenting themselves in a certain way and doing stuff in a certain way. Like they're kind of sort of a talent agency at this point. They're a little more involved than that, in that they are also an organizer for tournaments to a certain extent. But in a lot of cases, they're a talent agency.
Mm-hmm. That's what a lot of them have become.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because I don't think the money is necessarily so much the issue, because if you look at stuff from like Business Insider, like they mention, okay, when Tenny originally signed his contract back in April of 2018 and then extended it to a 36-month contract, at the time that he signed it, he had 150,000 subscribers on YouTube. And now he has 10 million. You know, being a part of FaZe Clan absolutely helped him. Mm-hmm. Being a part of FaZe Clan absolutely brought that man to the mountain. And the financial argument that is being made here is that they've retained 80% of the revenue generated from sponsored videos and advertisement deals, and 50% of the revenue generated by in-person appearances. That's probably not going to be a shitload of his money. Maybe the sponsorship stuff, but the advertising money, probably not. You know, advertisers, like advertising on the line at this point isn't great, as anybody who has been negatively affected by YouTube's adpocalypse will tell you.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of his money is probably coming from his Twitch, if he's doing any kind of streaming, or his YouTube, or wherever he's doing streaming from, is probably coming either through tournament winnings or directly from viewers. I'm sure he's paid FaZe Clan a bunch of money, but I'm absolutely positive that, like while he's probably paid them more than the $60,000 that they're claiming, it's probably not a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I think the issue would probably not be as big of a deal as it is if it wasn't for the fact that they are taking on a role that they are not qualified legally or otherwise to take on. Like I think that they probably are not. They're probably not so far separated from one another as they think. I think it's basically just a case of communications have broken down, but this the FaZe Clan organization probably really isn't prepared to be doing the kind of shit that they're doing. You know what I'm saying? They are not really prepared to be the kind of talent management group that they need to be here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that there's, some financial hoo-ha going on with this. But I also think that somebody who has become as big as Tfue has become probably could have named his fucking price as far as that went. I would argue that probably the only significant issue that they've had is likely FaZe telling him, you can't work with this company or you can't work with that company because of some type of conflict of interest with FaZe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's probably where a lot of the disagreements are coming from. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's an unreasonable thing for him to be pissed about. But I feel like this particular conversation, as far as it goes between FaZe and Tfue, is probably not gonna change a lot.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
And it's probably just going to get worse because, like I said earlier, like all these esports companies are just popping up all over the place. They're building esports arenas all over the place now. Like we got one that's being built in Philadelphia next to the sports complexes. That's like a 25-minute drive for me. We have a team called the Fusion in the area. It's just like, how long until there's a union for esports players now,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard too because so many of these companies aren't only taking on competitors; they also take on a lot of purely content creators.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these people who are involved with these organizations have never been to a tournament other than as a spectator and will never play in a tournament because their whole career is Twitch or YouTube, and that's all that they do. So then you have to take into, well, they have to have a different contract because, well, they won't see tournament winning. So should they make less money just because they don't play in tournaments for us?
It's also
Should
where
they
their
take
source of
us-
money is going to come from because
Right.
like on Disney XD, they got an hour-long show now where they show several Twitch streamers, playing games, clips and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so should they take a bigger cut of their Twitch and YouTube earnings than the one who competes and also happens to upload to YouTube? So there's a lot that goes into it with that. And Mark, I think what you said kind of hit the nail on the head is they're telling him he can't work with certain sponsors because they're sponsored by a competitor. So let's say, for example, I don't know any of FaZe's sponsors. I don't really follow FaZe that much. For example, though, Optic Gaming is sponsored by Turtle Beach, the headset company. So let's say I'm part of Optic Gaming. They're not going to turn around and say, yeah, you can get an individual sponsorship with Astro.
No.
You're immediately conflicting at that point. And, you have Optic MPI or whatever the name would be at that point saying, well, I took this personal one over the one the company took. So then you're...
Yeah, you can't be a you can't have
company.
a team. Yeah, you can't have a team that's sponsored by Logitech and be like, "Oh, hey, I want to get this gear for free from Razer,"
Right. And there can be, I guess at that point there can be subsets of it because you guys said you have the Fusion, that's your Overwatch team. Optic Gaming owns the Houston Outlaws, but they have different sponsors as far as some peripherals go. So that could maybe be your separation, but for an individual like this, that is probably the biggest thing is he wants to work with whoever he wants to work with, and there's a really good chance that those sponsors are probably offering him a lot more money than FaZe is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying, oh, well, I could make $1 million over there from this one company, or I can make a quarter of that here from FaZe because I'm getting a little bit less from sponsorships or just overall. And I think that's a big part of it.
Right. I mean, I'm absolutely positive that FaZe is probably taking a decent amount of money from Tfue at this point. But I would venture a guess here that while there are a lot of esports organizations that are exploiting people for money, I don't know if that's necessarily FaZe Clan's intent. I think what probably happened here is Tfue built himself into the celebrity that he is through association with FaZe Clan. And people are approaching him and saying, we're going to offer you XYZ amount of money for this thing. And he negotiated a contract with FaZe based on his relatively low value to them as a 150,000 subscriber YouTuber with, X amount of skills in esports. So now that he's gotten to ninja level, he has much more value to them. If he had approached them and renegotiated his contract, they probably would have taken that into consideration. But I'm not saying that they're not fucking him, but this definitely feels like a case where he made his money with them, he made his name with them, and is like, well, fuck you then, deuces, I'm out. Yeah. I definitely feel like FaZe Clan is probably not handling their financials as well as they should. I definitely feel like they are probably leaning in a bit harder than they should on getting their money however they can. But I definitely think that, if Tfue had tried to do this by himself, he would not have been successful at it. So there's probably a case where both sides are at fault in this one. In this one particularly, let's say that. And I don't think it goes anywhere in particular. Honestly, I think they probably negotiate out of court and it just goes away.
Yeah.
Yep.
And as big as FaZe is, and they're one of the top probably sized esports organizations and well known at this point. I can't see them being the person who is just trying to take advantage of all of these people, because they're so big that that's going to make news, obviously, and that's going to crumble the entire organization. Like you said, I think it was, we signed a contract before I was big with X percentages, and then it worked fine. But now, we're in a completely different bracket of making money and viewership overall. We need to renegotiate somewhere, and instead of doing that, he's just tried to get out of it.
Yeah, and honestly, again, it's probably just a case where he's pissed that he can't have the particular sponsorships that he wants more than anything else. I don't think that they're making a shitload of money off of his back. I think it's probably more than the $60,000 that they're claiming, but I don't think it's a ton more. I think that, I'd say probably, if I had to venture a guess, over 100,000, but not much more than 100,000. Though I don't know how prolific the guy is. I'm just speculating based on the amount of money that they're actually bandying back and forth. But the thing is that I feel like if he had come to them to renegotiate, they probably would have done it, because he's probably the most famous person that they have, and they probably are making enough money off of him that it is worth it to keep him happy. He probably was just like, well, I don't like the fact that I'm limited in who can sponsor me and whatnot, so fuck you.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really much more I can add to this. I pretty much agree with everything you guys just said up to this point. So I think we can bring the show to an end here. Actually, you know what? I like to bring back a segment, put it to a vote between you two. Shall we do a end of show questionnaire with our audience? Spencer, I'm sure everyone would like to get to know you better. So what do you think, Mark? You up for that?
I mean, I'm perfectly fine with it. A couple of the people who were here are, people from my streams and whatnot. So They probably know more about me than they want to, but...
Well, that's why we got Spencer here, so now they can get to know him. So if you guys got questions, go right ahead, type it in. Keep it PG-13. Zig thinks he might have heard of you.
I don't know. I think that Zig guy's a little shady. I don't trust him.
I don't trust him either, and he's been in my house many times.
Curse you, PG-13.
So when was it? When was it you said that you're going to be available, Robert?
End of June. Let me look at the dates. I'm taking a vacation starting the 22nd, which is the night of TMG. That I'll be going on Saturday.
What the
so I
fuck
can
is
go-
a TMG?
Too Many Games Convention.
Oh.
You want to come to that? Trust me. You'll have fun.
Is that the thing that you've tried to get me to go to for the last 2 years in a row, and I keep saying, oh, I might go to it, and then I never go to it?
Yeah, not
Okay.
not the fighting game tournaments, but the actual convention. Try to get you and Emily and everybody else, and Emily's the only one who shows up. But
So what? So you said the 22nd to when?
I'm on vacation from the 22nd to the 29th, which is the following Saturday. So those 2 nights.
Well, we are going to do a board game night on the 1st.
Yeah, I know. I said I
I
couldn't.
know that. So probably the 29th would be the one that we could do. So I will figure that out and let you know. I will talk to everybody once we get together, but
Sounds good.
curse you, PG-13 rule. Listen, like you can do like a soft R as far as questions goes, just like not a hard R.
Like you can drop the F-bomb once.
You can drop the F. I've dropped the F-bomb more than once tonight.
I'm talking about the chat, but yes,
More
I
than
know.
once in one sentence.
Okay, so, well, I'll ask you a question, Spencer. So, how long have you been streaming, and follow-up question, what got you into it?
So I've been streaming and actually putting effort into it for a year, and I think we figured it up to be about 3 months. About last February is when I started streaming. I had always been very interested in online content creation, from stuff like Red versus Blue and Game Informer's Replay.
I
series.
missed replay.
I know it just came to an official end for a while, and I'm really upset about it.
What were some of your favorite replays? One of my favorites was when they did RoboCop on the Xbox, and then they played through Shenmue.
I liked. I didn't watch all of that one, but I remember parts of it, and it was good. I really liked the Overblood Super Replay. That it just pulled me in. Something about it. It was ridiculous. Man, now I'm trying to think of my favorite ones. I have to go back and watch all of them at this point. I feel like, because it was so good.
All right. Oh, we got an actual question. So this is for all of us. I'll go first on this one because I actually did feel physically ill playing a video game. The question is, have you ever played a video game that made you physically ill, like actually sick? And for him, it was Haze on the PS3. Well, for me, it has to be a game that involves intense movements. For my dad, he couldn't stomach the original Turok Dinosaur Hunter on the Nintendo 64. You know, those funky-ass graphics moving around with those bland textures. It drives him nuts. It gives him motion sickness. I would say, for me, it's games with intense lighting effects and strobing effects. Like, I don't suffer from seizures, but I do get bothered by, intense lighting effects and all that stuff. Like, I actually have to look away because it makes me kind of like, a little nauseous almost. So, like, there was this one game that came out on the PC that I reviewed for Die Hard Game Fan. It was a pseudo mech game, or a space combat game. Strike Force Zero or Strike Suit Zero. The PC version allowed me to dial down on the effects a little bit, but when I reviewed the port on the Xbox One, I couldn't dial down those effects at all, and I couldn't play that game for more than maybe 30 minutes at a time before I started feeling nauseous from both the zero-G effects and all the blooming effects, the bright lights, particle effects, all that stuff. I'll move it over to you, Spencer.
I don't think that I've ever felt like physically ill from a game. I think more I've just gotten disoriented. And the biggest one I can think of was, I think it was either Dead Space 2 or 3. It was 3, where you do a lot of the zero gravity stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and you would go one way, and then you would land, and the camera would go the other way, and I would have to take a few seconds to be like, okay, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, that game was not super friendly for you.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like it. Like I said, it didn't make me like physically ill or anything. It was, I had to just take more moments of where I went, okay, what the fuck, and then kind of figure out where I was in the game. But I don't think I've ever really felt like physically ill from a game, because I mean, I've played a lot of first-person shooters. That was kind of what got me into esports, was Halo.
Yeah, I
So
know a
quick,
game that got
rapid
Mark
movement
physically
is
ill.
me.
The last 2 Leisure Suit Larry games on the PS2 and Xbox.
No, they didn't make me physically ill. They made me angry. They didn't make me physically ill. Sorry, I had the hiccups. Trying to think. I have never played a game that made me physically ill. The closest that I can think of that I have come to that was The Path.
I'm not
And that
familiar
game
with that game.
Yeah, it was a game from the company Tale of Tales, which was essentially a story about a bunch of different girls attempting to go to grandmother's house and following a particular path, and if they went off the path, they got sexually assaulted by somebody and then would get murdered. And it was kind of sort of meant to be a sort of a euphemism for coming of age and various other different things, but the way in which it was handled, it just felt deeply fucking rapey. And I was just very put off by that. Like, I think it was an extremely bad attempt at trying to get across whatever they got across. And, you know, there's a reason why that company ultimately went out of business, and it was, you know, it begins and ends with that game.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't make me physically ill, but it got me pretty close.
Almost reminds me of, like, I would play I played a couple of visual novels. The literature club game.
I want to be well, okay, Doki Doki Literature Club is whatever. Like, visual novels that have that kind of content in them usually hit the nail of what they're aiming for, but what they're aiming for is something more provocative, shall we say. This game, I think, I think this game was punching above its weight class.
Trying to
Like,
get
it
your
was
stomach
trying
to turn.
No, I think it was trying to say something profound about the human condition, and the artists who were creating it were just deeply bad at expressing themselves in the way that they wanted to. So they attempted to create a thing and instead just made something unenjoyable. Like, the game is very much one that is incredibly divisive. There are a lot of people to this day who defend the game as is, and, you know, I'm willing to say that that's entirely fair. It's very possible that just I did not take away from it whatever it was that needed to be taken away from it. Like, that may be a failing on me as the consumer of the art. I'm not the only person that feels that way, and I don't feel like, you know, I'm any poorer for it. It's just, for me personally, I felt the way that it was executed was kind of disgusting. Honestly, I don't think that was the intent. It was just.
Gotcha. I guess we'll take one more question if anybody has one. If not, then we're gonna wrap up the show, I guess. So,
Fucking Doki Doki Literature Club, Jesus Christ!
I know.
we talked about.
Spencer?
I haven't played it, but I watched a friend play all the way through it, and it's
There's this one scene, like, where you're staying the whole weekend with the one girl in the classroom after you see what she does to herself. I'm trying not to spoil it here, but the one girl comes in and sees everything, and you see her throw up, and that kind of thing, if you detail it way too much, kind of, you know, makes me want to throw up. How do you feel about
that game? Yeah, that game. I'm not going to spoil anything from it, but to me, it's just very amusing that, like, I hope that person who created that game eventually gets to a point where, you know, they get to make content that makes them lots of money, because I think they did a good job executing on that particular thing. But it just amazes me that, like, the major framework that's based off of is kind of sort of cribbed from a hentai game.
Yeah, I do believe he is working on an actual, like, full-fledged game now. Since the success of, you know, how popular Doki Doki was. I did get...
And that game was free, too. Like, that's just depressing.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't make a dime off of that fucking game, man. Damn.
Yeah.
Maybe that will lead to him making money off of the next one, though.
I hope it does. I hope it does. Like I said, I think it's really interesting that he kind of, like, I don't know if this was necessarily his intent, but he kind of sort of, like, cribbed his major plot device off of, like, a hentai game that, like, nobody played. But, like, I think it's interesting in terms of its raw execution, and, you know, so long as he doesn't rely on that as the twist that we need to go through for the next game that he does, I think that'll be good.
Yeah. All right, so I guess we're going to wrap it up right about now. So before we end the show, let's do our plugins. So, Spencer, tell us what you do, when you do it, and how you do it.
Yeah, so right now we stream every Monday through Thursday from noon to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. We've got a few things that will change with that. Later on, we're working on getting Monday nights back to play games with the community. And on Thursday nights, we do a podcast for the community True Gaming that I'm a partner with. We bring on people and kind of do something similar to this. We talk about gaming and Twitch news, YouTube news, all that kind of stuff. We do a lot of discussions around mental health over on my stream. It's something that's really important to us. And this month in May, we're actually raising money for an organization called Heart Support, who has their own Twitch stream as well as a stream team that I'm part of. They're a nonprofit mental health organization that helps people find resources or has a lot of resources available for people who maybe can't afford to go see a therapist, things like that. So we do a lot of that on my stream. We're kind of throwing in some new stuff too. We're doing some video editing streams. So if you're interested in video editing or graphic creation, that is a thing that we're going to start doing a little bit more of.
I thought about doing video editing or streaming video editing. Like, after I make a video, I record like a new video of whatever it is I'm doing, and I'll be at my computer, but I don't want to waste all that processing power because Adobe Premiere eats up so much just for the encoding.
Yeah, I luckily have a dedicated gaming PC and a dedicated streaming PC.
Ah, very nice.
So I'm very lucky that I don't have to worry about that anymore, because I tried to do it before when I only had one machine, and I had to render out all of the footage, edit, sit there and basically not move and render out the footage, because if not, it would get choppy and freak out on itself.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Mark B. Writing, tell us what you're doing and who you're doing it with and when.
Right now, I'm just waiting for my fucking anxiety medication to work the way that it's supposed to. I will hopefully be able to start streaming again regularly on Fridays and Saturdays, as I have been soon. But yeah, it's just been really annoying trying to adjust to a new med. So as soon as I am ready, you will know.
Absolutely.
But
And
beyond
where
that,
can they get updates about you doing your stream?
My Twitter account, almost exclusively. Twitter.com/MarkBWriting or @MarkBWriting, whatever. It's right under my fucking picture here on the screen.
The one that's conveniently giving everyone the finger.
No, it's the double deuce. It's the double
Sure.
deuce. There's an important distinction there. It's not just one; it's two for the price of one. But
That's
yeah,
just
so
a bargain.
there's a bar. See, Spencer understands. Spencer, yeah. See, Kane also. This, my friends, how I love you. But yeah. So as soon as I'm at a point where I feel comfortable actually trying to perform, I will get back to streaming regularly. It's just been some time adjusting to the new meds. I have an appointment on Thursday with my psychiatrist to see what's going on here as far as that goes. So, hopefully we'll be ready to go this weekend. I don't know. I will keep everyone informed.
Okay. For me, I'm still doing Monster Hunter Mondays. Every other week, GVN Live on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. We haven't done any episodes of GVN Live Plays on the alternative. Hopefully when Jan returns, we'll be able to do that as a crew. It'd be kind of nice. We'll see about next week. We'll see how you feel after your doctor's appointment, Mark. And for Wednesdays, which is my other normal stream day, I have to figure it out because we have concluded 3 Vets and a Noob. The show is now done for, so I might make it Monster Hunter World Wednesdays. I don't know. So I have to figure out what's going on there. And getting ready to work on a new episode of game adaptations. I really want to talk about these Zelda comics that, not a whole lot of people are aware of. Not just the Nintendo Power one, but the Valiant comic series that only ran for 7 issues. So I really want to talk about that. And that's pretty much what I have on the horizon for me. So, and with that being said, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and watching us tonight. I want to thank you, Spencer, for joining us. It was a pleasure having you, sir.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back on. I'm glad I could make it back to an episode.
I would love to have you on again in the future and not have to wait a year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit easier now that this is my my full-time job at the moment, so it's a little easier for me to schedule things than it used to be.
All right, and Mr. Mark B. Wrighton, as always, thank you for being with me.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And once again, from myself as well, thank you, Spencer, for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me back on.
All right, and on behalf of GVN Live, ladies and gentlemen, thank you and have a good night.